Hello, it's time for a story. So, you may want to get yourself extremely comfortable, possibly more comfortable than you have ever been in your entire life up until this point. And while you're taking a moment to get that comfortable, I will tell you that this podcast and these stories are supported by patrons. So if you like these stories and you would like to support me to write more of these stories, then become a patron too. You could do that on patreon.com/Can I Tell You a Story. That's patreon.com/Can I Tell You a Story. And you will receive bonus stories and other goodies that you can find out about on the site. Now, I hope you are the most comfortable that you have ever been in your entire existence. Let's begin. When Zig's parents got divorced, Zig went to live with her aunt. Just until the dust settles, her mother told her, brushing a strand of hair back behind Zig's ear in the way that she hated. Like a holiday, pet, said her father, leaning in her bedroom doorway, sounding more absent than usual. Zig had a private theory that someday he would fade away completely until he was like an outline of a father in a colouring book that no one had ever coloured in. She squinted at him to see if she could see the wall behind him. Not yet. Okay, said Zig, shrugging one shoulder and looking around her room, wondering if she'd miss it. She wouldn't miss the arguments, and the house was mostly arguments. She swung her legs off the side of her bed and felt the floor under her bare feet. Can we have pizza for dinner? Hey, Aunt Mez, said Zig, on the day her father left her on her aunt's front step like a parcel. Her aunt smiled down at her standing there on the doormat. Hey, Aunt Mez, said Zig again. Can I have a puppy? Zig's Aunt Mez wore red corduroy trousers and glasses with black frames and thick silver hoops in her ears like a pirate, and her hair was always a mess. She lived in a weatherboard house next to the train tracks on the old side of town, where the houses were slowly losing their right angles and sagging into more comfortable shapes. The rooms rattled every time a train went past. Aunt Mez told her she'd get used to it. Zig figured she was right. One thing she knew was that she could get used to anything. Zig kept a list in a battered green notebook with squares instead of lines on the pages. Things I Know was written across the top of the first page in green pen, the letters at the end squashed together so they'd all fit. Just Mez, said Zig's aunt, watching Zig's father, her brother's back, as it got further away down the gravel driveway. Aunt makes me feel like a wicked spinster, jealous and ugly and headed for a grisly end. Not the good kind of wicked either. Not the kind that'd make it worth it. A grin flashed across her face. Hey, Mez, said Zig, pulling her notebook from the backpack at her feet, lying where her father had left it. She turned to an empty page and looked up. How many kinds of wicked are there? A puppy, huh? Said Mez, bending to pick up Zig's backpack. This all you brought? Yeah, said Zig. Mum said not to take over your house. Did she? Said Mez, the smile in her voice replaced with studied neutrality. Come on then, you can at least take over your bedroom. Inside, Mez's house smelled of incense and soup. The hallway was long and dark. Plants crowded the windows of the rooms they passed like they were admiring the view. This room's yours, said Mez, outside a door at the end of the hallway. The door sticks. You have to shove it with your hip, see? Don't shove it closed too hard, though, or you'll get stuck in there. Just yell real loud if you do, though, and I'll come and free you. Zig paused in the doorway and looked back over her shoulder, a frown on her face. I'm allowed to yell? She said. House rules, said Mez. Keep nothing bottled up. But be considerate about it, okay? Unless you're stuck in your room, if I'm asleep and you gotta yell, yell into a pillow. Zig kept frowning as she digested this new rule. Be good, her dad had told her on the drive over. You do what your Aunt Mez tells you. She's being very kind letting you stay, just until the dust settles. I will, Zig had said, imagining dust settling on everything until it was all a uniform greyish brown. Hey, Mez, said Zig, does that mean yelling is a good kind of wicked? Maybe it does, said Mez, and Zig could see she was really thinking about her answer. On one hand, it's not wicked at all, feeling what you're feeling, but taking a kind of gleeful delight in doing things that most people think you shouldn't be doing, things that hurt no one, that might be the good kind of wicked. Hey, you hear that? The train's coming. Quick, come outside. Zig left her backpack and her green notebook on the bed and followed Mez out the back door and down 3 concrete steps to the yard. The grass was long and full of patches of clover, and an apricot tree took up the back corner. Laundry hung on wires, stretching from the fence to a post with a crossbar on it, concreted into a hole in the ground. A train horn split the air. Face this way, towards the rails. Ready? Said Mez. I'll count to 3, and then we yell. Got it? Zig nodded, and her heart beat fast, fast as the oncoming train. Good. 1, 2, 3, yell! Mez had her eyes closed and her mouth wide, and Zig could just hear her voice over the thundering train, but she couldn't make out the words. She took a breath and screamed into the sound of tons of steel flying past, a clattering, rushing blur that got inside her skull like a landslide. No words, just noise, loud and true and real. She felt tears pricking the backs of her eyes like the first cracks in a dam wall, and when the train had passed and taken its thunder with it, she looked up to see Mez grinning at her. Good, right? She said. Trains go past every 6 minutes, at peak time, when everyone's coming home from work. Sometimes I spend the whole time out here, lying in the grass and shouting all my inside thoughts out at every train until I'm as empty as a dry bone. Zig felt tangled up inside, like making noise had caused the doors to carefully closed compartments to come loose. I don't feel empty, she said. I feel even more full. How long does it take to be empty? Well, it takes as long as it takes, but if you've only just started letting everything you've felt in your life out right now, it might take a while to start feeling clear. Like a bottle of water, yeah? If you tip it upside down and it all tries to come out at once, it can't, because the neck's not wide enough. Is that why it's called a bottleneck? Mez grinned. Yeah, she said. You hungry? There's soup. New things always make me hungry, and you've had a lot of new things happen today. Zig was suddenly starving. I need to write that down first, she said, about the bottleneck. She waited for Mez's response, braced for an irritated admonishment to be quick. It didn't come. I'll be in the kitchen making toast for the soup, said Mez. Come when you're ready. New things kept happening. Zig learned how to catch the train to school. She ate toasted sandwiches with egg and cheese in them for breakfast, instead of mushy cereal drowned in skim milk. She filled in 7 more pages in her notebook. She got used to the rooms rattling as the trains flew past. And every day she went outside and yelled everything she'd kept shut up inside herself into the noise of the trains. On Tuesdays, Mez met her at the station, but the other day Zig walked home by herself along the dirt path between the train tracks and the back fences of people's houses. She liked looking through the gaps in the palings into all the different yards. The overgrown ones were the best. That was another thing Zig knew. The best adventures came from chaos, not from perfectly mowed grass and orderly roses. The House of Arguments had perfect grass and neat, correct, concrete-edged garden beds. The only adventures Zig had found in that yard were when she was lying on her back, looking at the clouds. Her father didn't have a ladder tall enough to prune all the interesting bits off the clouds. Sometimes Zig put 20-cent pieces on the rails to see them flattened as the trains went over them. Sometimes she put rocks on the rails. She wondered if she derailed a train, if it would come crashing off the track and through the kitchen wall of Mez's house, but it never did. It was Thursday when Zig got home from school and Mez opened the front door with a bigger grin than usual. Come and see, she said. Zig jumped down the concrete steps and into the yard. She's not a puppy, but... A brown rabbit sat in the grass, its nose wobbling as it chewed. Zig's eyes went very round, and she sank down into the grass to meet the rabbit's eyes. What's her name? She doesn't have one yet. What do you think? Zig called the rabbit Catastrophe before she knew what the word meant. After, the name stuck. Mez thought it was funny having a rabbit that was meant to be a puppy called Cat for short. "We'll look after her together," she said. Zig turned a clumsy cartwheel and fell into the clover. Trains kept passing, and Zig kept yelling into the noise of them. "Empty yet?" Mez asked her when she came in. Zig's shoulders sagged. "I don't think I'm ever going to be empty." "Do you feel good while you're doing it?" "Yeah," said Zig. "It makes me feel big. Bigger than all my thoughts." "Do you need to feel empty if it makes you feel big? Maybe that's your version. I get emptied out. You get bigger than your insides. It makes sense that we get different medicine. We're not the same person." "I think Mum and Dad want me to be the same person as them. I think they wanted each other to be the same person as them too, and that's why they argued so much." A train passed, rattling the room. Even from inside the house, the sound made Zig feel bigger, dragging everything out of her, even things she hadn't known were there. Nothing bottled up, Mez had said, and Zig liked it. Nothing to guess at. No tightropes to walk. Zig kept yelling at the trains. She got bigger, and then the dust settled. "I don't want to go," said Zig. "It'll be weak about," said her father, looking at his hands, out of place in Mez's kitchen. "A week with me, and then a week with your mother." "But what about Cat?" said Zig. "We're looking after her together." "A cat?" said Zig's father. "You know you can't have a cat. Your mother's allergic." Zig thought about trying to explain, but it's easier to nod and say nothing. "House rules," said Mez, and Zig lifted her gaze from the floor. "House rules?" asked Zig's father. "You always broke every rule you could find." "I was the good kind of wicked," said Mez, watching for Zig's small smile. "I'm sorry you're going. I'm going to miss you, Zig. Come and visit whenever you like. Every week, and in the holidays. You still have to help look after Catastrophe." Zig nodded. One thing Zig knew was that she could get used to anything, and new things would keep happening. Especially if you were the good kind of wicked. And kept yelling with the trains. Thanks for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this story. And if you did, and you want more stories, perhaps you would like to become a patron, because patrons receive bonus stories. And there are piles of bonus stories already waiting on the site. And you can find out more about that, and about my endless thanks, which you also receive, on patreon.com/Can I Tell You a Story. Until next time, yell into the sound of an oncoming train and see how it makes you feel.